is doing a presentation where he's looking at specifically Barack Obama and how Barack Obama is effectively been presented as the new Messiah. But in reality, it is effectively going to be more of the same. I mean, Henry Kissinger just a few weeks ago said Barack Obama presents the greatest opportunity for the New World Order for many generations.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah, and I mean, let's not forget, of course, there's Zbigniew Brzezinski, the guy who nurtured Jimmy Carter to the presidency, has also been responsible for nurturing Barack Obama. And it's also interesting to note what Zbigniew Brzezinski actually said about controlling the black population of America when he wrote Between Two Ages some nearly 50 years ago. But he has nurtured Barack Obama basically ever since Obama was a student of Brzezinski at Columbia. And so what we have today, is the epitome in America of a quality actor. I mean, George W. Bush was a buffoon. I mean, everybody knew the guy was a buffoon. I mean, he didn't even try and conceal it. Obama is very polished. Obama is effectively a black version of Tony Blair. And Obama, just like Tony Blair, will never permit himself to in any way reveal that he's not making the decisions. I mean, Gordon Brown looks like a broken man right now in the UK because he is a broken man. Despite the fact that he served the longest apprenticeship in political history, having lived next door to Tony Blair for 10 years.
Right.
When he got next door to number 10, he still had no idea that as the prime minister, he had zero autonomy. So it came as a very, very rude awakening to Gordon Brown, and he's still struggling to come to terms with it. But Obama is going to go through, I think, the same rapid learning process. But like Tony Blair, Obama's just going to buy into it, hook, line, and sinker. I mean, look at, he's been in power. He's been in office basically, 5 weeks?
Something like that.
And the agenda that's being pursued is arguably, in some respects, even more aggressive than George W. Bush's agenda.
Right. Well, I think he's in on from day one in that sense because he knows what he's doing. And again, I mean, endless articles now have been written about this fact that he brings in the same people that have been in there before. There's no agenda of change from his point of view. I mean, it's the same people behind it. So how could anything change, right? With the same mentality. That's
exactly.
Ridiculous.
but the thing is that the wider population have been totally hoodwinked.
Absolutely.
Into believing that this guy is the new Messiah.
Yeah.
And I gave a presentation. Actually, I was with Scott Tipps, and the two of us gave a presentation in Stroud in Gloucestershire a few weeks ago. And unbeknown to us, the local mayor was in the audience. Anyway, during the course of my presentation, I was talking about the GM industry in the US, and I made the observation that the GM agenda would continue to be accelerated in the US. And to support my view, I said you only have to look at the people that Barack Obama is bringing around him.
Yeah.
I said it is going to be more of the same. And the mayor stood up and identified himself as the mayor and basically said, "How dare you take away people's hope?" As it happens, of course, Scott, being an American, was actually able to stand up and obviously support the observation that I was making. And Scott basically just took the guy in about 10 minutes through chapter, line and verse, how the mayor, tragically, had been hoodwinked into believing that things were going to change when the thinking American knew that was not going to be the case.
Yeah.
So Andy will bring a very entertaining. He's an excellent presenter, very good researcher. And he will bring, a presentation that, will certainly set people talking.
Brilliant. So it's very timely and very good to get some Obama expose, as it were. That's very awesome. And then we have beyond yourself, of course, Ian, that will be talking at the conference as well. We can talk about that later on. We have two more people that we can talk about that will be attending or speaking.
Well, not least is Helen Sewell. The second lady on the panel, and I saw Helen give a presentation last year, and she's an astrologer. She's a professional astrologer, and I mean, I don't profess to really know anything about astrology at all. It's certainly not anywhere near my area of expertise, but her presentation was truly insightful, and much of what she predicted would happen in the run-up to the year 2012. And the reason that she latched on to 2012 was the fact that, because of everything that's occurring, 2012 was taking much more of a focus in people's psyche. And I think that, this is something that we need to give more airtime to. We should not dismiss those who have spent their life researching what has been rubbished as a science for 300 years or so. And I think Helen is a very interesting lady. She has some very interesting observations, which of course are not conjecture on her part, because basically she's taking these observations from her reading of the astrological charts of the next 3 years.
Right. That's very interesting.
And so it will be very interesting, and I think it's important that people perhaps have the opportunity to get a heads up.
Absolutely. Well, that's it's good to balance things out with a more, I guess we can call it a bit more metaphysical or a spiritual aspect to the whole time that we're in currently, and that there are some other things going on as well behind the scenes that we might not be prone to think of all the time.
Well, that pretty much encapsulates the mission statement of the alternative view. And although I've sort of expanded upon it on the website, but I was asked to put into one sentence my ethos that I was trying to develop with the alternative view. And what I came up with, I've said, it's to advance awareness and facilitate discussion of political, scientific, and spiritual alternatives without constraint by consensus reality and or received wisdom.
Very good.
And so we have to step outside of the bounds of dogma, and this is what we're trying to do with the alternative view. So, this is not a UFO conference or something of that ilk, and I'm not decrying UFO conferences, but what we are looking at here ostensibly is very much with our feet on the ground, bound in reality. We're not trying to look at the extreme paranormal, supernatural, spiritual realms, but we are looking to see how these worlds interact and interrelate with each other.
Yeah, very good.
And that, of course, is again the perfect introduction to the last of the currently named speakers.
Yes,
and that's Adrian Gilbert. And Adrian will be known to many people because he has quite a portfolio of books under his belt. He's written some excellent books with other authors, with both Robert Bouval, I believe, and Maurice Cottrell. But Adrian first came to my attention when I read The New Jerusalem. And those Red Ice listeners that are familiar with my series of DVD presentations, which I label Project Zion, will know that in the middle DVD, which I recorded in July of 2007, this is the Fool Me Once DVD, I made reference to Adrian's work in the New Jerusalem, where he's looking at London, and he's looking at how there are a group who know themselves as British Israelis.
Yes.
And they believe that they are the lost tribe of Ephraim. And how they've effectively contributed to the architecture and the layout of London, and how perhaps they are announcing their agenda within the cartography of the city. So It was very evident to me that Adrian was an outstanding esotericist.
Yes.
And then as I discovered more recently that Adrian's actually in the process of recording a series of presentations which are going to be available on DVD, where he's looking at the Invisible College. And of course, the Invisible College evolved into what we know today as the Royal Society. So, just 300-400 years ago, where the Invisible College absolutely took cognizance of the spiritual realm, evolves into the Royal Society, where, of course, it's effectively endeavouring to completely separate itself from the spiritual realm, and keep itself and everybody around it sort of bogged down in scientific dogma. So Adrian's point is that scientific dogma has effectively become the new religion.
Very interesting, and I guess we can point out also as well, Adrian co-authored the Orion Mystery with Robert Bauval as well, so a lot of people will definitely know about that one. Yeah,
a remarkable guy, I mean, Adrian has really come to the fore. I mean, I've seen him speak now on 2 or 3 occasions, and every time I hear Adrian speak, I learn something. I mean, he's one of the speakers who I will always make sure I'm sitting down to listen to his talks.
Awesome. So, well, that sounds wonderful. I definitely looking forward to. I haven't heard about him before, actually. So this is going to be really nice to listen to his talk. Wonderful.
Yeah, I can assure you, Henrik, he will add to your education. I absolutely promise you.
Wonderful. That's what it's all about. And of course, last but not least, we have you, Ian. What would you be addressing on the conference?
Well, who can say? I mean, it's still 3 months away, and events are changing dramatically.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm going to actually explore how we have been led into this. And once again, those people who are familiar with my Fool Me Once presentation will know that in July of 2007, 1 month before Northern Rock folded, I was predicting that the European housing market was going to crash, and I was predicting that basically the banks were going to go into free fall, and that the economies were going to collapse. Now, I don't claim any special insight. I wasn't the only one. Of course, there were many, many other people who saw it coming.
Sure.
And it's like all things, when you start to participate in a game, after a while, you will get to know the rules of the game. So, you may sit down at a chessboard with no idea how the game is played. But even if your partner or your opponent doesn't explain to you how the game is played, provided you persevere, it's not going to take you too long to understand the basic moves.
Yeah.
And then if you keep at it, eventually you're going to start to be able to predict his moves, and you're going to be able to then give the guy a real game. Well, this is what's happening, I think, more and more with contemporary researchers. It is a game where the rules do change. The rules do change very regularly, and it's perhaps a bit like 3-dimensional chess. But by engaging in the game, we can actually have some insight as to what is probably coming down the track.
Yes.
And obviously there were many books written on it, but because obviously the template was there, this is exactly what had occurred in the run up to previous recessions and depressions. Well, as you will be aware, I also talk about other manufactured trauma.
Yeah.
I mean, I've uncovered obviously documents, right-wing think tank documents from the 60s, where they talk about introducing climate change as an alternative to war to keep the masses occupied.
Yeah, yeah.
Peak oil is another, manipulated crisis. The food industry, the food crisis is manipulated. Kissinger in 1973 to destroy the American farmer. The food crisis as is being presented now to introduce GM foods. These are all manufactured crises. And basically what I'm going to be talking about at the Alternative View is trying to give people some insight into how they can predict what's occurring and what action perhaps they need to take. Because unfortunately, what a lot of people do, even though they see it coming, they don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So, for example, when I saw the housing crash coming, I said to my wife, I said, basically, if we are thinking about moving any time in the next 10 years, we need to sell our house.
Yeah.
Because, we want to have the flexibility to move, point one. We don't want to be caught in a situation where we just can't sell the house. And secondly, we don't want to be caught in a situation where our primary asset is falling in value.